I've done over 200 real estate deals on the island of Puerto Rico worth tens of millions of dollars. And in my experience, these are the 5 worst places to buy a house in 2025. Number 1, the mountains. Don't get me wrong, I like to visit the mountains. I love the mountains even. They're peaceful, beautiful, and cheap. But they're also a pain in the ass to renovate. It's really hard to get labor up there, and it's especially hard to deliver the construction materials on those twisty, curvy roads. And even when you do finish the rehab, your buyer pool is tiny, unless it's a trophy property. When I first came to the island, I did a deal up in the mountains of Caguas, and it took me 45 minutes to get up there and trying to meet the contractors, and again, they wouldn't show up. It had me pulling my hair out. It drove me crazy. And this is just one way when you're flipping up in the mountains that the mountains can slow you way down. So the nearest Home Depot is far away. Your crews don't show up on time. We were lucky. We had bought that property in Caguas up in the mountains at a very low valuation. Like I think we paid $15,000 or $16,000 for it, and it was a full duplex hanging off of the mountain. It had beautiful views. It was a bit of a special property, and when it came time to sell it, we were able to sell it, and we did make some money on it, but I wouldn't want to do it again just because it was so difficult to get in and out of the mountains and driving up there all the time to meet contractors who didn't want to show up. And the people who work for me in San Juan, they just don't like to drive 45 minutes up into the mountains. So labor's a problem on the island of Puerto Rico no matter where you go. That's just a true thing. Delivering products to wherever you go, that can also be a challenge. But when you're on those twisty, curvy roads up there in the mountains of Puerto Rico, it gets hairy. So I try to stay away from the mountains, not to say that I would never do it. This is just letting you know the experiences that I've had. Hey guys, let me tell you about my premium community. It's called Apex. We are a group of doers, and we want to invite you if you want to be a real estate investor, if you're just getting started, or maybe you're ready to scale. Either way, join us in Apex. We've also got some goodies that come along with the membership. You get access to Go High Level, which is an incredible CRM that'll keep you organized, help you to scale. And if you're looking to solve the data problem on the island of Puerto Rico, we've just recently partnered with Red Atlas, and they are solving all kinds of problems when it comes to real estate data for the island of Puerto Rico. When you join us, you get 4 months free of Red Atlas. So join Apex. Let's go back to the video. Not that I wouldn't do it, because if it's a spectacular deal, guys, you should know this about me. I'll buy anything. I'm just letting you know that the challenges, they get exacerbated. They're harder up in the mountains. Number 2, next to public housing. This one's tricky because we actually do like to buy properties next to public housing, but for long-term rental plays, not for flips. If I'm buying something right that's next to a public housing, or they call them a caserío on the island of Puerto Rico, I can renovate that property and make it nicer than what other people are living in, and I'm always going to be able to find a tenant. The trick is that I've got to be able to rent it out at that low rent or at the same kind of rents that the neighborhoods demand. I'm not going to renovate something super nice and expect that because I renovated it super nice that I'm going to get $1,000 a month when everybody else in the neighborhood's paying $600 a month. I'm renovating the house really, really nice, and I'm going to rent it for $600 a month. I'm just always going to have tenants who are anxious and wanting to be tenants of mine. But oftentimes, the people who watch our channel, you're wanting to invest in flips, or you want to get that sweet appreciation. And for those plays, it's not so great. You're going to have limited amount of people who are going to want to buy a home in those areas, and it's certainly not going to appreciate at the same kind of speed that other places on the island will. I've had a couple of experiences with this. I'll tell you one recently that we did. A single-family home in Catania. Right across the street was a caserío, and was just very hard to sell it on the back end. It was a very nice house, but your view was of the caserío. And even though it was a safe neighborhood and we did end up selling it and we did make some money, it took us a lot longer than we expected it to. So we bought that house for like $45,000 and we sold it for about $125,000. We thought we were maybe going to get a little bit more of a premium than that. It was a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house. It was really nice. We did an incredible renovation, but because of where it was just a little bit harder to find that person who wanted to live in that house. So we ended up selling it to an FHA buyer, and we did okay, But I'm just letting you know, took a little bit longer than we thought it should have. Now, I will tell you, I have another great example of, we own a 7-unit that's very, very near Casa Rio. And our 7-unit is one of our best performing rental properties that we have on the island right now. We've had it for about 5 years, and we bought these units pretty cheap because nobody else wanted to take a chance on it. They needed a ton of work. Guys, we're value add real estate investors, so we're never afraid of that. We fixed them up and we got them looking really good for the area, and then we rent them out for the same price that other people are paying to live in the houses in this neighborhood. So a 2-bedroom apartment there we're renting for like $650 a month. A 3-bedroom 1-bath apartment in the same building we, I think, are renting for around $800 a month. And that's in line with what Section 8 renters are doing in this same neighborhood. And it always stays rented. We never have a problem when someone does move out. And so I really like it for this long-term rental play a lot more than I liked my experience doing it as a flip on the previous example. Number 3, flood zones. Now, this is one that a lot of people miss because we're on an island, and you would think that flood zones would really be kind of limited to right along the coastline. And we're going to talk about the coastline in a minute, but these flood zones happen coming off of the mountains, near rivers, and sometimes, like in San Juan, there are portions of town that just don't seem to drain very well. And so when it rains, they flood. And you have to be very careful about owning properties here because nobody really wants to buy it on the back end if you're doing it as a flip. So your buyer pool is going to be limited. And even if you're trying to do a long-term play, people know when it's going to be 6 inches underwater, and they don't generally want to live there either. So you find that you're going to be doing the resale on the very low end. You're going to be doing the rentals on the very low end as well. You can't renovate yourself out of being underwater. Some of the things that we realized about these flood zones is that when you buy in them, it seems like you're getting a great price. And early on when we came to the island, we bought a few properties in flood zones in the San Juan metro area. And we kind of knew that it was a flood zone, but we had just gone through this big storm. And so we had hoped that this was just like it had flooded because of the storm. Well, it flooded every time that it rained. I can remember we had 2 duplexes kind of not side by side, but street by street. So on one street we had one, and then the next street over we had another. And we bought them very, very cheap, like bought full-on 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 3-bedroom, 1-bath, top and bottom duplexes for like $25,000 a piece. And we fixed them up, and they looked great, and we were going to flip them. We were going to sell them on the back end. And really, it ended up being that we had to sell pretty cheap because nobody wanted to live there. What would happen is every time it would rain, the streets would flood. I mean, there would be 6 inches of water. I can remember one time being there as it was raining, and the water was coming up so fast, the cockroaches were coming out of the drains. It was quite a sight to see, and we realized then that we might have made a mistake. So we've stayed away from those areas ever since. And keep in mind, guys, if you're in a flood zone, it's going to be very difficult to get insurance. I may have already said that, but I want to repeat it because it's very important for those of you that want to do even a buy and hold investment. If you can't get insurance because it's in a bad flood zone, it's something that you need to know. We self-insure, and so we don't mind buying things that we will take a risk on. And if we're getting a good enough deal, I told you earlier in this video, I'll buy just about anything if I think it's a good enough deal. But flood zones is one that got me early on when I came to the island of Puerto Rico. Don't let it get you. At least know what you're doing as you're going in. Last thing I'll say about flood zones is that I think that you can find better places to spend your money elsewhere. It's going to be difficult to find tenants. It's going to be difficult to sell. It's going to be difficult for the bank to finance you when you're in a bad flood zone. So that's enough about that. Let's move on to number 4. This one's going to shock you guys. Number 4 is beachfront property inside of the maritime zone. So those are those properties that are like right there on the ocean. And man, there are a lot of properties like that on the island of Puerto Rico. And you will see prices that will make you scratch your head where you'll be saying, I can't believe I can buy an oceanfront house. And there are several reasons why that is. When you see these dynamite deals right on the sand and you think you've got this deal of a lifetime home run, and guys, we're all about buying those deal of a lifetime home runs, and I love me some oceanfront property. If you are too close to the ocean, what happens is the ocean comes knocking one day, and when it knocks your property down, what you learn, or what I've seen people learn, is that you don't own the land underneath it. At least you don't own the land underneath it in a way that you're allowed to rebuild. So if you're inside of this maritime zone, even if you do own the land, if the house gets damaged because of a storm surge, you oftentimes won't be allowed to rebuild the house. And so that's a big, big problem. And I've seen this happen to many, many people, locals and expats alike. Fortunately for me, I haven't experienced this one. I haven't been hurt by this one, so I don't have a real life example for you that's anything that I've ever done. But I can tell you that after Hurricane Maria, we've seen houses that were along the north coast and even out on the west coast that just kind of, the ocean came in, swallowed up the house and took portions of the house out to sea. And then these houses can never be rebuilt. And even if you could rebuild them, would you spend the money to rebuild them? Because keep in mind, you're not going to be able to finance it with a bank. You're certainly not going to be able to get insurance on these properties because the next time a big storm comes in, it's going to do the same kind of damage. So it's going to cost you tons of money every time you have a big storm, even if you're able to rebuild. The last thing I'll say about buying properties on the sand or this close to the ocean is the beaches are for the people, or the beaches are for the public on the island of Puerto Rico. We've got over 3,000 beaches, and it's really important culturally that everyone has access to the beaches. So we've seen people who come in and they buy stuff that's close to the beach and they think, oh, that's my beach. And then they get themselves in trouble with the local population because they try to deny access to people. So don't be that guy. Don't do that. This isn't a fight that you want to have. And by the way, it's not one that you're going to win. This last one, number 5, one of my favorites, Gringo Land. Well, what the hell's Gringo Land, Robbie? I love that you asked that question. Gringo Land is those places like Dorado Beach East, or Condado maybe even could be considered Gringo Land, maybe to a lesser degree. Old San Juan, certainly Palmas del Mar, some of the country clubs out in Rio Grande. These are just areas where expats have gravitated to. It's areas that have strong HOAs, and they've got the golf courses, and these properties have just skyrocketed in value. I mean, absolutely moonshot type stuff. So when I came to the island of Puerto Rico, Dorado Beach East, the most expensive house in the entire neighborhood had sold for like $13 or $14 million, which I choked on at the time. I thought to myself, who the hell can afford to live in a $14 million house? And I'm sure it's a beautiful, 25,000 square foot house somewhere up on a hill overlooking the ocean and a piece of paradise. I get it. But now those houses are all 10, 12, 13 million in that neighborhood. The most expensive one last year sold for $40 million. I heard it's about to go on the market again. I don't expect that it's going to sell for more than $40 million. I expect actually that the person who bought it may sell it for less. I'm not exactly sure which house it is, and so I'm not trying to talk bad about Dorado Beach East. It's amazing. It's paradise. It's not my cup of tea. I don't like living in places where the HOA tells me that I have to keep my grass trimmed and they send me a letter for everything. And I'm not really a golfer, so I don't love the country club lifestyle. But that's not why I wouldn't invest there. The reason that I didn't invest and haven't and probably won't invest in those areas is that there's so much appreciation that's happened a very short period of time that I believe that there's more downside pressure than there is upside availability right now. So let's say it like this, guys. Remember this. Gringo Land is overpriced, overbuilt, and overregulated. Those are the key big things that I don't love about investing in those areas. Listen, Puerto Rico's full of opportunities, but you do need to know what to avoid. And I've made these mistakes so you don't have to. And if you want help finding a good deal, the ones I'm talking about are the ones with real upside potential and partnership potential. Consider joining our premium community called Apex. The link's in the description. In Apex, you're going to connect with people who are actually doing deals. You're going to get access to strategies that we use and that have worked for us time and again. And you're going to have access to capital and even projects that aren't showing up on Zillow. Drop a comment if you've ever done a deal in one of these 5 worst places to buy a house in Puerto Rico, or you've been pitched one, or maybe you've survived one and done pretty well with it. Let me know. And if you like this content, watch this next.